Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and you know what? We got another good one for you today. Today, we actually connect with someone that I've been talking with for over a year about getting on the podcast, and in the middle of all that, he ended up getting on the show Naked and Afraid, and I saw him actually in a commercial on the Super Bowl. Today, we're connecting with Cole Wilkes. He's on episode 1, season 17 of Naked and Afraid. He's an amazing elk hunter, a badass, and a little bit of a crazy man, and he is basically as Texas as he comes. So first off, I want to thank Cole for coming on the podcast. I'm glad we finally were able to make it happen. And of course, thank you for sharing some amazing stories with us today. I know we'll get you back on the podcast soon. To you listeners, let's kick this thing off, man, and let you enjoy Cole's stories. But thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, that's it, guys. Let's let Cole tell you his stories. Thank you. All right, Cole, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, brother. How are you?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I feel like we've been trying to put this together for a long time.
Yeah, man, I've been doing this podcast over 2 years now, and I feel like within the first 6 months, you and I were chatting back and forth because I know you're a big fan of the Elk Bros, and they were some of my early guests. But I'm super glad to have you here, man. There's something unique about you, which is you're the first guest on my podcast that I have seen their ass before. So that's a pretty big deal. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Before we go anywhere from that, why don't we maybe stop for a second? Let you introduce yourself and maybe why you can let everyone know why I've actually seen your ass. So go ahead,
Yeah,
Cole, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Cole Wilkes. I live here in Bertram, Texas, just north of the big city of Austin, Texas. Born and raised here. I've been hunting pretty much my entire life. Yeah, a lot of you may have seen me or may not. If you haven't, go watch my episode on the Discovery Channel on Naked and Afraid. My episode aired on, it was season 17, the premiere episode, number 1. Yeah, I also have a little YouTube channel called Flatlander. And then my buddy Joel and I have started another podcast called In the Bush that him and I do that's pretty much geared towards, survival, bushcraft. But we do talk a lot of hunting in there as well.
Yeah, man, that your episode of Naked and Afraid was epic. I've watched that show plenty in the past, and most of the time it's just people getting bug bites and complaining.
Yeah.
But yours, man, when you're crawling up on that alligator, I don't know if you're going to tell that story, but I'm like, what is wrong with this man? You're just naked crawling through a swamp, trying to kill an alligator with a tomahawk, basically.
Yeah.
Man, it's a very cool episode. I would say, I've seen probably 50 episodes in my life, not all of the ones that they've made. But it was easily the most exciting episode I've seen, and who knows? Maybe it's because I knew you were on there, but still super cool, man. And it was fun to watch you do some crazy shit. Even though I did have to see your ass.
Man, it was really crazy, and I didn't even really grasp how crazy it was until after the fact. So whenever we were filming the show, we have PHs. If anybody didn't know, that's a professional hunter in Africa. By law, they have to be there with us just for protection. Because we are out there in the middle of nowhere, and it's legit wild Africa,
Yeah.
And the one animal that my PHs are scared to death of was a crocodile, and none of them would go anywhere near that water. And it was funny because I had killed one on, so we were coming back from a little walkabout on day 3. And I ended up harvesting one on day 3 and caught it on the trot line and, processed it and everything. And then after we ate that sucker that night, it was just so good. The eating was so good, and it had so much fat on it that, I had a captive audience there. So anytime that I was done with my big game hunting, walking around out in the savannah and stuff like that, I would go back to my pond and hang out in the shade and just wait on these little crocodiles, because it was full of like adolescent to teenager kind of young adult size crocodiles. I think the biggest one in our pond was probably about 6 foot. And
Well, the biggest one you knew about, at least, right?
well, that is true. And that's what my PHs were
Yeah.
like so freaked out about, is because they said a big one won't show his face for a long, long time. They can pretty much tell you're coming or walking up to the pond long before you can even, see them. But I felt confident that there wasn't a big one in there. So I, with my producers and stuff there, it was my goal to make that episode the best episode of Naked and Afraid ever. And
Yeah.
I was
Check that
constantly
box,
doing
man. Check that box.
I was constantly doing things to really make good TV. It is reality TV, so it's up to whatever the contestants do to be exciting. Like the producers don't tell them to go, hey, go do something cool. They just, they just follow you around and document the situation on the 21-day challenges anyway. And
Yeah.
it was just to the point where I was like, you know what, man, I can't seem to get close enough with a spear on this thing. So I'm just going to get in the water with it. And I'm going to creep up to it and try to grab that sucker with my hands. So that is,
man.
They played that little scene through so many of the previews and, all the sizzle reels and stuff like that. I went after that crocodile there were several of them actually, but I went after them on a daily basis. And you guys got to see probably the two coolest. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, man. Watching that show in the past, it's typically just I'm, lounging in the couch. I'm sitting deep. But your episode, I'm sitting on the edge of the couch, like, Cole, what are you doing? Like yelling at you, being like, come on, man, get out of there. So it was a lot of fun. If you guys haven't watched it, guys, please do go check it out, because it's the craziest shit. I don't know what you'll think of Cole afterwards, because it's not something I would ever do. But you're just braver than me, I guess.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was just one of those things that, if I was to capitalize on it, I mean, what a crushing moment for the show. It would just be epic, and not just that.
Yeah.
I mean, as you could see, I mean, we did make some good TV. So that was my goal, man, is to go out there and have fun and just be the wild man that I am and, enjoy every bit of it. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And you and your partner had a perfect kind of, you just a perfect team. Like, you guys had complementary skills, and you guys took care of each other really well. It was a fun episode to watch, man.
Thank you.
Like I said, at first I was like, I wonder if these guys are going to get along, but you guys got along so great.
Oh, immediately. I mean, you could just tell that we clicked, and we both had, we were both like-minded as far as the way we wanted to go about our challenge. And Shell was awesome. Anything that I asked of her, she was totally there, and vice versa. I couldn't ask for a better partner. Honestly, that was the one thing that I was worried about the most. I didn't care about being naked or any of that. I knew all that shit was going to fade away after, an hour and a half, because the real work starts. My real worry was my partner. And, I definitely didn't want to end up in there with a bitch and somebody that's just,
Yeah.
I even told my producers, I said, if y'all pair me with somebody crazy, I'm not even gonna deal with them. I'm gonna leave and go do my own thing. So y'all are gonna have to be prepared to film us in different locations. But I hit the jackpot with Shell. She was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, again, I encourage everyone to go check the episode out. It is phenomenal. It's great. And you see Cole do some crazy shit. But we're here to hear some of your favorite hunting stories, and I'm sure those are maybe on some of that stuff is on the list. But you're a pretty well-regarded elk hunter, so I'm assuming you got some crazy stories for us today. So what do we got? Why don't you set the stage?
Oh man, I've got so many to pull from. Let's go with the Colorado elk hunt. I'll start off with first, and then maybe we'll go back into the Naked and Afraid. Because I do want to touch on my big game kill that I had there in Africa. But yeah, elk hunting, man, that's like my passion. That's what I work all year for. That's what I prepare so much for. And I spend the entire month of September. 10 years ago, I quit working for anybody else and started my own company. Working for myself as a contractor here in Austin. And my wife and I were getting ready to buy a new house and do that whole thing and have, the big house payment. And we decided
Yeah.
we decided to move on to some property and pay cash for a little mobile home. And now we travel the world, and I hunt as much as I possibly can, man. The entire month of September for elk, and then we move into deer after that, and it usually goes till about January. Um,
Yeah.
but
There's some
all
great
of
deer
that
hunting. If you
was,
have the spot in Texas, there's some great deer hunting down there. So,
yes, there is. Yeah. Typically, most of my deer hunts are out of state because there's not
oh,
enough
really?
public land in Texas. Yeah. I just, for the amount of money that I can spend on out of state tags versus a lease and feed and stuff like that, it just benefits me to go get 3 or 4 out of state tags. And
Yeah.
Oklahoma's right here across the border, and so is so many other states that are great hunting. So um, I don't hunt in Texas too much anymore, but um, where I was going with that is me and my wife pretty much changed our life um, for the better. I mean, we're debt free. We don't have any house payment or anything like that, and that's just so I could go selfishly, so I could go elk hunting for the entire month of September. Um,
Yeah.
so this particular hunt, I was hunting with a kid there that lives in Colorado. His name's Kyle. We hunted together for several years, and I hunt with Kyle because he's one of those mountain kids. He was like 18, 19 years old, just super athlete. He was the one guy that I could really get to hang with me in those nasty parts in the backcountry and not want to go back to the
Yeah.
truck or get scared or whatever. So
Yeah. How did you meet him? I got to ask. How does this guy from Austin run into this super athlete in Colorado?
yeah, so my very first hunt that I did in Colorado, I went up with some friends of mine. They were like, "Hey, we're going to go elk hunting. Would you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, but how much does that cost?" And anyways, they introduced me to Kyle, um, which was just kind of a friend of theirs, Diane's son. And yeah, I ended up, meeting Kyle, and he lives there at 8,000 foot in the mountains, and,
Okay.
just a total mountain beast. And my buddies were like, if you really want to go do some crazy hunting, you need to get with Kyle. They don't even like to go with Kyle because
Yep.
it's just too
Yeah.
difficult. Like he just whips their ass up the mountain. And after our hunt together, I knew right then, I was like, well, the style hunting that we're doing currently is not my style. And I want to go, I want to do the deep backcountry, the nasty stuff. I
Yeah.
want to get back there. I don't want to see people. I want to be as far from people as possible. So then Kyle and I started really teaming up, and it was just, it was just meant to be. Just everything about the way we move through the woods to our calling, just strategy, the aggression, everything just matched with us. And yeah, so we teamed up, and I mean, immediately we're just in elk always. It's crazy.
That's
Um,
awesome. It's good to find a
yeah,
good hunting buddy like that. I've had some that like they're they throw in the flag pretty easy. I'll go and go and go and go. But if someone's like, "Hey, we should probably go back to camp," I'm like, "All right, let's go." But I don't think about
yeah,
doing it. But I'm quick to jump on their suggestion. So it's good to finding someone that like matches your style or your fire, and you can just keep going with it. It'll definitely put a lot more elk down.
yeah, yeah, man. And that's kind of hard to find for some guys, finding a good hunt partner that is, on the same level that you are, and you guys are gonna, your mindset's the same. It's always like, what's on the next ridge for us? It's always, we're always pushing further and wanting to go more and deeper. And to some people, it's just, they think about the dreaded aspect of having to haul that meat back. And, to me, I want to get into fresh elk that's never heard anybody bugle. So that's kind of
Yeah. Right.
my mindset. Um, but this particular year, we were having a rough go at it. And we were having elk bugle back to us, and we were having, you know, failed opportunities, just, you know how it is elk hunting, wind switch and puff the other direction and just screw up. So it was getting to the point to where we were both getting frustrated with our area. And I told Kyle, I said, man, I've got this spot, but it's, you know, it's a 6-hour drive from here. It's way up against the Utah border. I said, you know, I've had I had a friend of mine kind of tell me about it one time. And I think we should just leave this area and start fresh and go somewhere new. So we bomb off the mountain that afternoon, and it's probably, you know, it's getting close to peak hunting time, and we just made the decision, we're going to do this, we're going to move. So we pack up camp, we go back to the truck, spend that whole evening and night driving across Colorado, going to another OTC unit. And we pull up there, and we actually, I think we drove part of the way, and we were just so beat from the hike, we camped. And then the next day we finished the rest of the drive. It was probably another 3 hours. We
Gotcha.
get there. There's not a particular like trailhead. We don't ever usually hunt off of a trailhead. I just don't like all the people. We usually pick some random weird like pull out on the highway, and we'll just throw the backpacks on and have a destination figured out, and then we'll head up the mountain. So this morning we're, you know, sitting by the highway, and I can't even remember, it's a weekday. So there's people, you know, flying by us, and we're packing our stuff and everything, and we're getting ready to go in. And I mean, we're just right there by the truck. I think we just barely skipped into the woods to where we could barely still kind of hear the traffic, and everything's just right there. Chaos, you know, it's busy, way busier than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I told Kyle, I said, man, let's rip a bugle right here, you know? So I rip a bugle, and I mean, immediately, probably a half a mile from us, this bull answers. And I mean, we're just scrambling immediately. And I wasn't expecting, you know, a bull to answer me with 18-wheelers blowing our doors off, you know, 150 yards behind us.
Yeah.
So, and we tend to do this often. It's so crazy, these weird spots that we land in that hold so much elk. But so this bull, he fires off, and this particular spot is real weird because we have to navigate through some private property before. It's like a real narrow stretch of public land, and then it opens up into everything that we can hunt, you know, 40,000 acres or something like that. And man, I've dedicated my elk hunting career to learning the language of elk, and how to speak the language, and how just everything about elk hunting I've just dove into and gave myself a master class, basically, through podcasts, through all different kinds of things. I mean, that's how I've become an Elk Bros coach. So I actually coach for the Elk Bros. I did for 2 different seasons on Hunt Wars. But anyways,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so we're barely in this little necked up spot where there's private property here, private property there, and we're, you know, it's a pretty good distance. And so I've got this bull, and he's just absolutely going crazy. And it's one of those situations where I don't think I could have made a bad call. He's just immediately committed from the first bugle that I ripped off to him. And here he comes, man. And it's just like clockwork, because I was explaining to Kyle like what I'm doing, why I'm saying what I am. I'm going to do this, and then the bull should respond like this. You know, it's kind of a teaching lesson. Sure enough, I mean, everything's just working like magic. It's just like he read the playbook, right? So I tell Kyle, I'm like, get up here. We're moving and covering ground and doing all the, you know, setup here, and this isn't going to work. And then we move a little bit because, you know, the bull moves, and I finally get Kyle set up, and I can tell, I'm like, okay, the bull's going to be coming right at him. I get back behind him just enough to where I can see Kyle, and you know, I'm doing my thing, calling the bull, and man, I can hear the bull now. I can hear his footsteps, and you know, I can see Kyle. He's getting his arrow all ready to go, and he's starting to put tension on the string, and I'm sitting there, and everything's, I mean, it's all great. And all of a sudden, somebody bugles back behind me, Like they just walked in
Oh no.
right on the same path that we just walked in on. And I'm like, what the heck, you know? And I you know, the bull's up there raking, and you know how it is. It's sometimes it's, you know, these animals have their own cadence. It's not like they do exactly what you want them to do. So now he starts chirping off to this guy that's coming behind me. So I'm actively having to call in this hunter because he's cutting around like far wide to get around me because he thinks I'm a bull as well, and the real bull is in between us.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep the bull coming towards Kyle, and at the same time I'm trying to call this hunter in so that I can wave him down to keep from screwing this situation up. Well, here, and I'm almost kind of getting kind of worried because this hunter's coming. We're in super thick country. I can hear the bull raking or getting close to Kyle. I'm watching Kyle just to make sure that whenever he draws, I'm ready to, to do something after he executes the shot. And here, all of a sudden, here comes this dude in orange, and I'm like, what the hell?
Oh.
Like, why is somebody wearing orange? And seriously, this is weak. It was a muzzleloader hunter, dude. And this guy it's a week before his season starts. So now I'm really stressing to try to get this guy to, to make eye contact with me or something. I'm trying to call him to me, but then I'm like, oh shit, this guy has a gun. This guy really has a gun, and so now I'm starting to worry. And the bull's getting closer to Kyle. The guy's starting to get closer to us. He's hearing the big bull bugle. He's hearing me bugle. I can't tell if this guy is, if he's going to shoot one of us, or if he's going
to. You see his gun?
He actually, yes, sir. He had a gun, and he was just making his way
and he's
to where
early. A week early.
He's a week early. Yes, he's a week early. And I'm at this point, I'm just trying to decide, like, do I save Kyle and I's life and just shut this guy down and yell at him and like, hey, we're hunters, we're not elk. But I can't see the guy again. It's just like a flash of orange every now and then out, probably 100, maybe 125 yards from me. So I'm like taking cover, and I'm still in the process of trying to get this bull to Kyle's shooting lane. So I do some raking. Bull blows up, big bugle, screams. I mean, to the point to where I feel like I could feel his breath. He was so close. I'm like, okay, Kyle's got to be right there. It's got to happen any second. And I'm looking through the brush, and I spot Kyle again. And because I was trying to drop back to pull that muzzleloader hunter back over to me and keep him away from sight of the bull, right? So at this point, I'm going back up so I can see where Kyle is, and I'm crushing brush and making all kind of noise. That's just my style whenever I'm elk hunting. Big animals make big noises, so I crush through the brush, and I'm just back there going ham on it. And I finally spot Kyle, and he's probably 30 yards from me at this point. And boy, he cranks that bow back, and I'm like, okay, he's fixing to shoot this sucker. Anchors, shoots, bull blows up, I bugle, the bull takes off, and here comes, and then I hear the hunter bugle. So immediately I just yell out, because I figure, okay, the shot has been executed. So I'm just like, hey, I yell over there at this guy, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, I thought you guys were elk. Anyways, I didn't even make any ground towards the guy, just kind of shoot him away. And luckily he just packed his stuff up and left country immediately. I didn't even have time to go over there and be like, hey, I wanted you to let you know.
I'm not surprised because he's poaching, man.
He's poaching, yeah. But I don't think he knew that he was in the wrong season. I think he had just mistaken the weekend that he was allowed to go out. Because, I mean, he had his hunter orange. Yeah. I mean, because if I was a poacher, I wouldn't think I'd be running around with blaze orange all over the place. So I just assumed the guy made him.
There's also a bear season at that same time rifle bear. So maybe
Yeah,
he was calling.
maybe.
So I don't know.
I mean,
That's a weird
this
situation.
dude was bugling elk. Like, I mean, he was bugling this bull and myself and I mean, he was doing a good job of covering distance. Like, he was definitely pursuing elk. Um, so anyways,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
get this guy gone or whatever. And then I look back at Kyle, and Kyle's walking back over to me, and he's just sitting there shaking his head, and I was like, I know, dude, this is the craziest thing. So how good was your shot? And Kyle goes, I missed him, dude. And I was like, what? What do you mean?
No,
He was like,
no.
I was like, what do you mean you missed him? And he was like, I don't know, dude. He was like, remember earlier whenever I was shooting my bow and I was shooting out to 70? And I was like, yeah. He was like, well, I totally forgot to roll my pin back up to the 20 spot. And I shot the bull, pulled back, aimed, executed the shot. He said total broadside shot at 22 yards. And he said, I slung it right over his back.
No way.
And just, oh man, I was just devastated, because what's funny is the day before he had made a bad shot on a bull, and we ended up tracking that bull for an entire day just to find that it was a mere flesh wound. He shot the bull in the brisket, real low shot, and then to shoot this bull and shoot totally over his back. And this is, we're just now starting this hunt on this new spot. We haven't even gotten away from the truck yet, right? So I'm like, no big deal. Let's, it happens. Let's just regroup. Let's just continue on with our plan. Let's just continue hiking in. So we hiked in about 6 miles from that spot after that whole blow up and that incident. We go in, we make camp, and then, we proceed to hunt that afternoon after camp is set up. We've got water, everything. We're camped right next to a perfect little spring. And I told Kyle, I said, well, let's go redeem yourself. Okay. So, it's about, I want to say it's probably about 2 or 3 o'clock at this point. By the time we make that 6 mile hike in, it's well into the afternoon from that morning. And as you know, in Colorado, typically in the mountains every day, 3 to 5 o'clock, you're going to get a thunderstorm up there at high altitude. So we're batting down the hatches, and we're hiking. We're probably a mile or so from our spike camp, and this is the same day. And so we get ready to weather a storm, and before we weather a storm, we hear a bugle, an unsolicited bugle, probably just below us, 500 to 600 foot in elevation. So I told Kyle, I said, all right, let's batten down the hatches. Let's get in our rain gear. Let's find somewhere to sit down, get some snacks, and we'll just wait this storm out. That way we can go pursue this bull. So that's what we did. And it probably took about an hour. I'm guessing it's probably about 4 o'clock now. And rain stops. We're good to go. It's real chilly. We're about 11,400 foot, just below probably about 12,000 foot elevation. So it's, it's in the,
okay.
After a rainstorm like that at that elevation, it could be in the 30s or 40s sometimes. The temperature just plummeted.
Yeah.
So immediately after the storm finishes, we get that same bugle rips off down below. So I go ahead and respond to him and answer. And probably about an hour goes by of me working this bull and us getting into situation, figuring out the thermals from the storm and the wind and all that. And we finally get set up perfect. And the bull comes in, and I'm in just some tall grass to where he can't really see me. And Kyle is set up to my right to where I'm bringing the bull across him. If you can picture that, he's coming straight to me, but he's coming across Kyle in several different shooting lanes, right? And at this point, I'm just calf calling. I'm just pretending to be a lost calf, a calf in distress. I'm tucked down into that grass as tight as I can be. We're in like north slope, but it's sparse open canopy. So there's just these random spots of like thick undergrowth, and then it's just like that typical bedding area where it looks like mulch on the bottom, mulch and moss. So I can see the bull coming from a pretty good ways. This bull comes all the way in to me, and he's, I don't know, He's probably 14, maybe 12 yards from me, and I'm laying in the grass just calf calling, and this bull is
Yeah.
stretching his neck out to try to see over this clump of grass so he could see this calf that I'm pretending to be. And the whole time he's giving me kind of like a roundup bugle and a slight lip ball telling me to come over to him. You know, he's trying to get me to come to him so he doesn't have to come so far to me. And behind him, his cows are calling, and, you know, they're calling me as well. And he's in front of them because I'm acting very distressed. You know, I'm making a very extreme point to get this bull to come over to me. And I mean, it's working like nothing. Here he comes, boy. I mean, he closes in so tight to me that I can see this bull's rack starting to like almost make shadows over my body. I mean, he's really close to where I can hear him panting and breathing. Yes, dude.
How did it walk by Kyle? Like, how did it get that close without walking by Kyle?
I guess, so what happened is he kind of skipped through a couple of lanes that Kyle had to shoot, and Kyle was too scared because of how close he was to us. Kyle was too worried to make a call to stop the bull. So he knew that at some point the bull was just going to stop within getting, you know, close to me, but not that close. Well, then the bull stopped at this point, and he's getting, I don't know what the bull's doing. Like, he's really just looking deep into the grass, and I'm sitting there looking at him. I mean, we're eye to eye almost, and you know, 10 yards apart, eye to eye. But all of a sudden, you know, I'm looking at the bull and I'm waiting to just watch an arrow go through him because the bull's head on to me, and I'm watching an arrow, you know, trying to wait for Kyle's arrow to go double lung through this bull, when all of a sudden I hear boom, and the arrow passes right in front of the bull, right in front of his nose.
No.
The bull blows up. The bull blows up. I bark to stop him. The bull wields out about 20 yards from where he was standing, so he's still within a 20-25 yard shot of Kyle. And Kyle's fumbling to get another arrow on. You know, he gets another arrow knocked, rips the bow back, and at that point, you know, the bull catches his movement. The bull barks, he blows up, and the bull disappears into the wild. What was so shitty is this time Kyle had everything ready to go on his bow, and what had happened is he left his rain gear on because he was a little bit cold, and he had it zipped all the way up to about his neck, and his bino harness was underneath it, so it was puffed out a little bit. And Kyle shoots one of those damn thumb releases, and whenever he pulled back, it clicked off on his rain jacket and prematurely shot the arrow off right in front of the bull's face.
Gotcha. So
I just had to bring
he fired that thing off. That makes sense. I was like, how'd he go left? But yeah, okay.
Mid-draw, man. And I didn't really care because I'd committed the whole rest of my season to trying to fill Kyle's tag. That particular season, I had actually shot my bull on opening day. I killed it 2 hours into the season and proceeded to call. Awesome. In 28 days, I think I called in 14 bull elk into bow range for Kyle, and we could never get an arrow in one of them.
No way.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I bet he hates this story.
He does hate it, but you know, it's one of those humbling stories that I like to tell people because it doesn't always go the way you want it to go, you know. And just to keep persevering and pushing forward, and you know, you just can't ever give up. That's my motto, especially in elk hunting. You never know when it's gonna turn around, and you never know when an elk's gonna respond to your bugle and just come right in, you know. But then you also need to make sure that you have all of your stuff dialed in and checked. And I try to tell guys all the time, I teach hunting courses and stuff, and always practice with your equipment, no matter what. And, you know, nobody ever thinks to go shoot with their backpack on, their bino harness on, and their rain gear. make sure whatever the situation is that you're prepared for it, and whatever scenario might land in your lap, you kind of got to be ready for it.
Yeah. It's a good point. I've shot with all that stuff except the rain jacket. I've never shot my bow in my rain jacket. I should probably try that out sometime. That's a great point. Now I feel like I feel bad for Kyle. That's a tough break, man. Especially 14 different attempts. That's tough. Let me ask you this, Cole. How long have you been elk hunting? You said that you got hooked up with Kyle initially. I'm sure that wasn't your first hunt with Kyle, but how long have you been chasing elk?
This is my 10th season of going elk hunting somewhere in the United States. Yeah, this is season number 10 for me. And
that's awesome. Always archery?
Or all archery, yes, sir. I don't shoot a gun unless I just am having a really bad day. Primarily all archery. I consider guns are more for protecting against people. That's just my philosophy. Yeah. I've had a bow in my hand since I was probably 6 years old, and pretty much every single animal except for one whitetail that I harvested last year, as a matter of fact, has been shot with archery equipment. Everything from coos deer to every elk, everything.
Yeah, I went antelope hunting last year, and I'll tell you what, you archery antelope, spot and stock for a couple days, and all of a sudden you really do want a rifle. But
yes.
as a whole, yeah, I'm with you. I try and do everything with archery if I can. I do have at least one rifle tag this year, but that's just because I wasn't sure if I'd get to do archery elk, because I do have that archery and moose tag. So, I want to fill a freezer, and if that's the opportunity given to me, that's what I'm going to take, I guess. All right.
So it's real funny that the rifle story from last year. I don't ever pick up a rifle, but it just so happened I had spent a week with Keith from season 7 of the History Channel's Alone. Keith flew out, and we spent 7 days in Oklahoma chasing whitetail. And I had a longbow then. I've been switching over to traditional equipment since the whole neck and afraid thing. Keith and I just ground it out in Oklahoma. We rattled in, I don't know how many whitetail bucks to bow range, but we just couldn't get it done. And then it's so crazy. I took Keith back to the airport, dropped him off, ran back to the hunting area that I was hunting, and that evening ended up getting it done with my longbow at 15 yards.
Awesome.
And the place we're hunting in Oklahoma, I mean, it's kind of like high desert. It's very arid, very New Mexico, kind of Northwest Texas looking country. So it's there's no trees. You can't tree stand hunt or anything like that. It's all hunting on the ground. You either spot and stalk or you rattle them in. So extremely difficult. And the last evening, I've harvested a buck at 15 yards. And then I got an invite from one of my family members. They had just purchased 600 acres in North Texas and was like, hey, nobody's hunted here in so many years, and you're welcome to go hunt it. Do whatever you want. You have it for the whole week. So I went down to Texas, and I grabbed my rifle after that extremely difficult Oklahoma deer hunt. And within the first hour and a half, I had found a 152-inch whitetail and had him on the ground at a 300-yard shot, and was just, I was so excited and so pumped to not have to struggle so bad. I mean, it was just to go through that amount of struggle through archery elk season and then deer season, and then to just walk onto a brand new piece of property and harvest one of my biggest bucks ever, it was super awesome. Because of the whole situation beforehand, it just made it epic. And that's my one deer hunt I've done with the rifle.
That's too funny. Did you have your bow with you as well? Or were you like, I'll just take
No,
whatever opportunity comes and you only brought your
no, I
rifle?
straight up was just like, this is going to be an easy hunt, and I'm just gonna enjoy, walking around and seeing a deer at 100, 150 yards and not have to worry about getting within
Yeah.
30. Is just, there's something that is just brings you such great peace of mind whenever you have that rifle with you. Um, you know, what a great way
Yeah. Absolutely.
to end a rough season.
I bet. I've actually never, I don't think I've ever killed anything. The only thing I've killed with a rifle, this is funny, is actually a turkey. I've
Oh,
been elk hunting with my rifle a couple times and I've just never been able to put it together. But I was axis deer hunting in Texas, and the property I was on was like really long and skinny, right? So I was like, well, if they come near me, I'm going to use my bow. But if they don't, and I see them at the other end of this field, I know that they're like 50 yards before they're going to dive into the other property. So I was like, I'll bring my 270 as well. Didn't see any axis deer, but I did call in a turkey right as I was about to pack it all up. And I just didn't feel confident shooting through the amount of brush that was in between me and him. And then he ducked away. So I was at full draw, put my bow down, and then picked my rifle up, took my call out again and called again on my slate call. And he popped his head up. And I was like, well, there you go. So I pull my rifle up. And of course, it's ×9 scope. So I can't find anything. So I pull it back down, drop it down to 3, pull it up, and just boom. Turkey's over. And I was like, oh,
that's
well, okay,
sweet.
I'll take what I can get. So yeah, like I said all the time, I'm an opportunity hunter, but I've been rifle hunting a bunch, but just never had any luck with a rifle. I've even killed a whitetail, but that was with a shotgun of all things. So I've just never
I've killed
really had a
several.
rifle kill. So maybe this season.
Yeah, I've killed several whitetail with shotgun, but I just because of kind of the area and the brush country that we have over here. When you have those deer in close counter, sometimes it's difficult to get a rifle or a scope on them, quickly and be able to get your shot off.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Cole, you mentioned that you have some details that you wanted to share about your African big game harvest that you had on the show. So why don't we dive into that one, man?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, it's official that I hold the largest animal harvested on Naked and Afraid history, by probably, I'm going to guess that I kind of beat everybody by about 500 to 800 pounds of meat. I, on
Pretty good record.
I think it was day 13 of my time there in Africa, I was able to connect with a eland cow, and yeah, we can dive into that story, man. It was so I had been having little successes throughout my entire time there. This being day 14. It was kind of a screwed up situation because a lot of these TV production companies or networks, they don't really have a friggin' clue about hunting or anything like that. So when they go in there and they set up so they have to have like a base camp to be able to have medics, and they have just some of their crew, a place for them to hang out. Wherever Shell and I decided to make our camp, they had to make a camp nearby, and they had a general area that they wanted us to stay in, so that they could be able to access us quickly and safely without any trouble or anything like that. So we had to set up kind of, to where it was convenient for them. And unfortunately, that setup looked like the predominant wind blowing into my hunting area the entire time that we were there. So for me to be able to...
How far out were they? Like quarter mile, half mile, or like closer?
As far as the production crew?
Yeah. Where was their camp relative to yours, roughly?
Their camp was probably about 400 yards from mine. Maybe not even that far.
Oh, so not far at all. Okay, yeah, that's tough with that wind. Okay, that sucks.
Yeah, they had to be close enough to where a medic could, to where they could get to us if we were screaming and hollering. They had to be within earshot of us because, we were in wild country. There's there's elephants, there's Cape buffalo, there's hyena, there's baboons, there's lions. I mean, everything, leopards, everything you can think of that's out there in Africa, that it was legit there. I mean, we could hear these animals every night. But the crappy thing is the wind, the way it was set up, and I had a boundary that I wasn't allowed to go past, on this one side of me, and then the wind was coming from that direction and blowing my scent all into the area that I was allowed to go hunt. So long story short, it took me usually a couple miles of hiking every morning to get into fresh country to where I knew that our scent wasn't blowing out any of the big game that potentially could be close. In this particular
instance,
the
production team just like following you, or how did that work? Because they
most
want
of
to be
the
within
time
earshot.
they did.
Yeah, okay.
After I killed that crocodile on day 3, they knew that I was a serious contender as far as hunting goes. And they told me, they were like, if you don't want us to go with you on a hunt, we will give your PH a camera and show him how to use it and everything. And he can document it with him because he has to stay with me no matter what. It's just the law. So they would actually let my PH and me go out in the mornings, and me and him would go all over the place. I had roughly 8,000 or 9,000 acres all to myself on this hunting concession. And just for clarity, it's a lot like Texas, man. It's a high fence ranch, but this particular ranch, just so you have a grasp of the size of it, this particular ranch was about 20,000 acres. The one that I was on.
Oh man.
And I had about 8,000 of that I could free range and roam. I mean, so I could walk 6 miles, was probably the furthest that I ever put on one day. And that's barefooted and naked. Okay.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah. In country with thorns and yeah.
Oh
geez.
God. They have these carpet
I've always wondered about
stickers.
this. This is just a personal question here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to ask if they give you sunscreen, because I am pasty. You might be naked, but like they got to be giving you guys sunscreen, or do they not?
Whenever we go in for insertion, they give us sunscreen and water that day because it's a very produced day. They have a lot of stuff to cover whenever we're inserting. They have a lot of filming to do. They have a lot of questions to ask you and just get your feelings and what you're thinking and, just everything about the environment or anything like that. So they do give it to you then. But then that's only the first hour of us, kind of being filmed. And then after that, you don't get anything, man.
Okay.
It's up to you to figure it out on your own.
No way.
Like everything. They don't assist you in any way. It was all up to us, stay out
That's
of
great. I'd come out a lobster, man. That wouldn't work for me.
I was semi worried about it. But I'm being a hunter, and even during our hike in to where we were going to be making camp, I'm moving through the shadows and the shade. I stick to the shadows so that I'm, I don't want my pale white ass shining, all across the landscape. So I made sure we tried to stay in the shade as much as possible. And that's just the way I move through the country anyway. If I have shade and shadows, that's where I'm going to be sticking, being an archery sniper. So this particular hunt this day, I could just remember I was pretty aggravated because nothing had been going my way. I think the day before I had missed a warthog at like 5 yards, and I don't want to say I missed him because I actually didn't take a shot. I just had a screwed up opportunity at a warthog at 5 yards, and I didn't want to take that shot whenever he was walking. So I was kind of waiting for him to stop, and he ended up catching my wind and blowing out. Anyways, I was a little upset about that because we could have had bacon that night. So the next day I'm headed out, and this is later. I actually took the morning off and just kind of did some work around camp and got some water. And in my area, we had this dry creek bed, so I was able to to walk this dry creek bed, and I had little wells dug all throughout. So, I mean, you got to think whenever you're 6 miles from your water source, you got to figure out either you're going to go back and get water, or you got to find water where you are. So throughout the 2 weeks that I had been there, I had dug these little wells so I could actually get some extended distance away from camp and know that I was okay, because I could go back and drink out of these wells. So this particular day, we had gone, and I'm at my furthest well. I go over and I'm getting some water. I'm just drinking through my straw. I say straw. I actually took the broadhead off of my arrow and my knock off, and I used it as a straw to be able to drink out of my well. And
That's awesome.
yeah, man.
That's awesome.
And so we're sitting there, and it's probably about 95 degrees, something like that. I'm just chilling in the shade, getting good and hydrated, when all of a sudden an oxpecker flies over. And if anybody doesn't know what an oxpecker
The hell's
is,
an oxpecker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an oxpecker is this gray bird, and they typically stick around the herds of big game animals. They're the birds that you see that are going in like the giraffe's ear and picking all the bugs and stuff off of them.
Okay.
So they frequent any
Got
big
it. So it's
game
probably
that's
a good
out
sign,
there.
right?
Very good sign. Whenever you hear or you see an oxpecker, you want to move towards that oxpecker. That's almost like a bugle in the elk woods, man. So I go towards where this oxpecker
Cool.
was flying, and just, moving super slow, just being very observant. And all of a sudden, my PH, he said, I can hear eland. And I was like, okay, well, what does that sound like? And he was like, you can hear a clicking. And I was like, what do you mean? And he explained to me, it's like, well, whenever eland walk, their toes actually overlap each other. And once they push pressure down, one toe goes up and the other toe goes down, and it creates this clicking sound. I couldn't hear it. So they were a couple hundred yards out. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now I can hear that. So we back up and get set, where I anticipate where they're coming from and where that ox pecker had flown to. Sure enough, man, I could hear this clicking coming, and it's just, this whole scenario probably took about 20 minutes to unfold. Sitting there, and
Yeah. That's
and
so
I know
interesting
they're
that they
coming.
click like that when they walk, man. That's cool.
It's wild, man. I mean, you can really, it's just a very repeatable click. Just that's just exactly how it sounds, and it's loud. I'm telling you,
Is it
I'm
the front
hearing
and the back,
this.
or is it just the one
I
of them?
think it's just the front, but I could be wrong on that. It could be
Okay.
every hoof, but I think it's just the front, because of the way they're built. I don't know. I mean, if you've seen an eland, they're enormous animals. I mean, their chest from bottom to the top of their back, they look like a crazy Brahma bull, and they have this big hump on their back. So their body is about 4 foot in depth from their belly or their brisket to their shoulder blades. Huge animal. So
Wow.
the clicking is very, very noticeable. And I mean, you can hear it coming, and I know that they're coming to my water source. So I'm getting ready, and sure enough, here comes
One of the ones that you made?
Well, yeah. Yes, one of the ones that I made. So what happened is
That's
the
cool.
baboons will get in. The baboons will get into my well, or they will dig their own well, and then the animals will come into that area, and sometimes they'll even dig their own well as well. They just know that a foot or two under that sand, there's fresh, clean flowing water, and they just. You can just tell, like, some there's wells that are scattered all throughout this little creek, and the baboons will come in there and dig these wells very well, and get down to the water table. And then the other animals know that they can come in and frequent those spots as long as they haven't been filled in by sand. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sitting there, and I can see all the way down. I can see all the way down the creek, and they're not making they're not coming very fast. It's probably 20 minutes has gone by and I can hear them out there 150 yards or so. So me and my PH, we creep up, get the wind to where it's perfect, and we know that those animals are going to be working across us, man. And we can hear them coming. Then I tell my PH, I see one out about 60 yards, and I'm sitting there butt naked, just huddling behind a mapani bush, and my PH is there, and actually he's in front of me, so that he can kind of. So he can make sure, because we've been seeing Cape buffalo and the baboons. He just wants to make sure that he's on point for any scenario to where he needs to protect me.
Gotcha. And he has a rifle or something like that, I'm assuming. Some kind of big game rifle.
Yes, he's got a 500 Bushman, Bushmaster. Yeah, big rifle. And so then I spotted this cow out at 60 yards. Well, what I didn't know is one had already closed in even closer. And all of a sudden out pops this cow, and I'm talking an ancient old cow. She pops out and she's 30, 35 yards from me. And my PH, he's looking at the one that's at 60. And I'm like, I told him, I said, right here, because I have to communicate with him because he's my camera guy. If none of this gets on camera, then it doesn't happen. That's just the rules of TV. If it's not on camera, it's not going to make it to the show. So even if I was to kill this eland and it didn't get on camera, it wouldn't be shown. They wouldn't even show us eating any of the meat, because it didn't get on camera. They don't have any context on how this animal got harvested.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm communicating with him to make sure he's got the camera on. So he's having to flick the camera on and get situated, and he's looking to try to find, and he thinks that there's another cow near the cow that's at 60 yards. Right. So I'm at this point, I'm like, I need to take my shot or I'm going to lose this opportunity. So it's a scramble for him to get the camera up, and he's looking back at me, and I'm drawing the bow over his head at this point. And he's like, oh shit, he's like, oh shit, I'm looking at the wrong animal. So he pans over real quick and gets the camera on the eland just in time for me to be able to execute my shot and make a 35-yard shot. It punches through the bottom end of her chest, just barely clipping her heart and then breaking her offside leg. It was real close to screwing that shot up, man.
Yeah.
Very, very little penetration because I hit that offside leg, and all the chaos that went on. She blows up and goes out there, and then she actually stands for a few seconds out at like 50 or 60 yards, just enough time for us to get a good glimpse at her. And my PH immediately, he was like, oh, you killed her, no problem. Well, man, an animal that is barely heart shot, just clip the heart. With the adrenaline that's going, those things can cover an enormous amount of land, of distance.
Okay.
So this time of day, it's already creeping into getting into, the sun is kind of setting. So we go up and recover the arrow. The arrow's got good blood on it. Unfortunately, it's just not a bunch of penetration. And so we have to go, my PH has to call it, because as soon as the sun goes down, it's an absolute no-go on anything. We're not allowed to move about. We have to stay and shelter in place. They actually lock us into our boma and put a bunch of brush and briars over the door to keep us protected at night, and then they leave us, okay? So we make our way back. I let Shell know, hey, I've hit an eland. We can't do anything right now, but tomorrow we're going to go back and try to track this thing down. So
was that the happiest you'd ever seen her at that point?
Man,
coming back with a whole bunch, or telling her you got a whole bunch of meat.
It was, but at the same time, it wasn't, because me knowing what happens in these scenarios. I've had a bull elk hit in the liver and him not pass away for over 10 hours. And I've come up on an elk and deer, and them not be completely expired and end up spoiling the whole situation because I bump them and then never find them. So I was
Yeah.
pretty worried about that, So I just told her, I said, I did get a good arrow in her. I didn't get a follow-up shot or anything. All we can do is just let the night go by, and then tomorrow we'll take up trail right where we left off. And this cow ended up making it. She ended up making it. I think it was around 3 miles. I didn't have any way to really
Oh,
to
wow.
track it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And luckily nothing had gotten her. And what's crazy, man, is I actually ran out of blood. And the way that we found her is I spotted, the buzzards, circling up above. I mean, just like you would see in a movie, like those South
Yeah.
Africa buzzards are just whipping tight circles over the top of my eland. And I actually spotted that from about a half a mile away, and then went straight to the birds and walked right up on my eland cow, laying right there on the ground. Um, it was just, and at that point,
That's awesome, man. I was
go
going to ask
ahead.
if you had any support as far as like breaking it down with the pH, or are they like required to do anything, or is it all on you?
No, no, they're not allowed to. No, they're not allowed to get their hands in there at all. So the only cutting tool or only cutting tools that we had was Shell had a tomahawk, with a removable head, and then I had, of course, my arrows with my broadheads on it.
Oh, man.
So that
So
being,
what was processing that like? That had to be a chore. And then packing it out completely naked. I want to hear all those details.
yeah. So if you can imagine, this tomahawk has, the cutting edge on it is probably only about 2.5 to 3 inches long. I mean, it's basically like a small curved knife. The good thing
Okay.
is I was able to spend some time that night with a good flat rock, and I actually got that tomahawk to shave hair on my arm that night. And believe it or not, it was insane how well that thing worked, because I was able to take the head
Huh.
off of the handle, and I could grasp the head real similar to a knife, but it was just kind of an awkward knife because the blade was kind of at the front of it. But man, as soon as I touched that thing to her hide on her belly, it split hide, and I mean, I went all the way up and cut through her sternum and immediately pulled out her liver and heart. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. The biggest thing is managing that big ass animal with 110-pound girl with you. So just the
Yeah.
just the hind quarter. So to put into to perspective, I mean, we have a cow eland on the ground, and my pH estimated her to be between 900 and 1100 pounds. So we're
Woo.
talking about an enormous animal. I mean, this thing is literally the size of a horse, or right there at the size of a horse. So each
Yeah.
quarter, like her hind quarter had to have been pushing 150 to 200 pounds just for one hind quarter. So the difficulty of us getting the skin off and then getting the meat off and then off of the bone and all that was just an extreme amount of work. Um, and because it was only Shell and I, we could only carry so much meat. Um,
Yeah.
so I did take the choice pieces of meat right off the bat. We took the heart, we took the liver, I took both back straps and both tenderloins, and that's what we were able to carry because we had such a long distance to get back to camp. It was just, we had to make a decision on what to do, and by the time we found her, it was only a few hours until dark again, and at that point, she had been sitting out there for over 24 hours. Um,
Yeah.
and luckily she hadn't died. She hadn't even gone into rigor mortis yet. So she wasn't stiff or anything. So she was still super fresh. I wasn't worried about the meat going bad. The one thing I was worried about is the predators that were going to be on her within a few hours. Um,
Gotcha.
because I
That
mean,
makes sense.
that blood trail was so long that she's laying blood scent for 3 miles until where she laid down, and then her just laying there and us processing that was a feat on its own. And I didn't want to be sticking around her whenever the sun started getting ready to go down, because I mean we could actively hear lions in the distance, and every night we could hear hyena. So it was it was daunting. It was a little sketchy, even with
I believe it.
having even with having a couple PHs in the production crew and everybody there. It was just, it wasn't a situation to take lightly.
Man,
So
gosh.
that was the meat that I ended up taking off of her. I will say that none of the meat went to waste. I'm not allowed to tell you exactly because of my contract, but I can say that none of it went to waste as far as, you know, it rotting or
Yeah.
anything like
No,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
So if you
Worst
can
case
read
scenario, it fed
if you
some
can
hungry
read between the
lions.
lines there,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the meat went to a good cause. The rest of the
Good.
meat
Good.
anyway. Yeah. So
Let me ask you a question here. The
yeah, man.
hide or the skull or anything like that. Obviously, I don't think you want to expend the calories during the time, but we're like, did someone go, "This is a big deal. Let's get him a little bit of like a memory of what he just did and what he accomplished." And do you have
Yeah,
any of
man.
the? I mean, it's not the best word, but trophy. Do you have any of the trophies from the
Yeah.
experience?
So they're actually waiting there in Africa for me. I got the head Euro mounted, as well as my crocodile skull is Euro mounted, and
Awesome.
the hide was tanned and made into a rug. So I haven't. It's so difficult communicating with the ranch manager and the PH and all that. So I am in the
Yeah.
process of trying to get all that stuff to get shipped back here. It's such a pain in the ass with the way the laws are written and stuff now. It's just difficult for them to get everything ready to go and then get through customs and all that, or whatever that has to go through, and then get through the states as well. So I am still waiting. It's been over a year, but hopefully I do get
Jeez.
my skull and my cape back. Yeah.
Gotcha, man. Did production help with any of the costs of that stuff? Just being like, "Hey, man, thanks for such the
No,
great
man, I
content.
paid
Like, let us help you out," or
no.
was it all on you?
You would think, right? But no, that's all.
Yeah.
That was all left up to me to foot the bill on that. The good thing is the taxidermy in Africa is nothing like the taxidermy in the U.S. Most of
Yeah.
the guys that are doing the taxidermy work there are local native tribesmen. So the it's very cost efficient, if I could say the least. I wouldn't call it cheap because these guys do really good work. I mean, they're fantastic
Yeah.
taxidermists. It's just the cost of it is so much more inexpensive than what we have here.
Gotcha. You know what's funny about that? I shot an axis deer in Hawaii recently, and your experience sounds a lot like that because, like, I had trouble kind of connecting with them. You know, it's Hawaii time; they're not really trying that hard to get back to me.
Yeah,
But beyond that, like, it was on Molokai. It wasn't on Maui. It's not this like big resort place where people a lot of money go hunt axis deer. It's kind of we were basically staying in a like beat up old dilapidated cabin, and the taxidermist there was cheaper for him to do it there and to ship it to me was cheaper than to bring it back to Colorado and then have someone do it here.
yep, it's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, yeah, it is so
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I think w- one thing that I see with my taxidermist here is he just gets so overrun because he does such good work. He gets so overrun with people that he can't do anything but
Yeah.
raise his prices just to try to minimize the volume that he's getting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Supply and
yeah,
demand,
so
man. That's the basic rule of economics. So,
that's
but
it.
that's good, man, Cole. That's two great stories, man. Thank you so much. I know I only asked for an hour of your time, so I tell this to everybody, but I'll listen to stories as long as you will tell them. But
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time, sir. So if you have any more you want to drop on us, great. Otherwise, let's tell the people where they can find you, man.
Yeah, brother, I so appreciate it. I do have some other stuff I do have to run and do. But yeah, you guys can find me, Cole Wilkes on Facebook. Cole Wilkes Hunter on Instagram. And then you guys can follow our podcast also. It's in the bush _podcast. Anywhere or on Instagram, and then anywhere, of course, that you get podcasts, you can find us there. Yeah, Michael, dude, it's so great to be able to finally do this. And, we've been trying so hard, and I apologize because it's just, my schedule is always so crazy, man. So I'm glad that we finally got to nail this down.
I believe it.
And, I hate that I took up some of your Saturday, but I so appreciate it.
Oh, not at all. My wife actually found a play date and with another lady that the husbands are not invited. So this worked out just fine, Cole. And I'd rather be here right now with you anyways. So,
Right
man,
on.
thank you so much.
Hey,
this was great to
do
the
you
listeners.
do you
I'm gonna make sure that Go ahead.
Sorry, dude. I'm stepping all over you. I just wanted to ask
That's all
you
right.
a little bit about and we can do this offline if you don't want to put this on the recording, but I was curious about your cow moose, and what your strategy is, going in there on that thing. Have you been doing a bunch of scouting? I mean, you kind of led into that, at the beginning, that you kind of, have had some issues with the moose before. But what's your strategy going in there on those?
Yeah, so I haven't done a ton of scouting, to be completely honest, because I've spent so much time hunting with a week in Hawaii and going antelope hunting and doing other things. I'm making sure that I'm putting in family time. But what I
Yep.
do know is I hunted there and did a bunch of scouting last year, so I have a pretty good understanding of the layout of the land, and I understand where I saw moose, and so I ran into a bunch of moose, and every time I ran into them, they didn't go very far, and they were there
Yeah.
day after day after day. So my plan is basically find the moosey country, those big open fields with marshy water running through them, and I've got about 50 of them pinned in the unit that I'm gonna be in. So we're gonna glass those
Sweet.
things up until we spot one, and then we're gonna develop a plan. And we're also, midday we might drive. There's a giant valley that kind of goes through the entire unit. I've seen them standing on the side of the main road that drives through that unit. So we're going to spend midday probably driving up and down, seeing if we can get something to pop out. But yeah, it's just about finding them, because all the
Yeah.
research I've done says they don't travel much. The bull moose will travel a fair amount when the rut starts. I'm kind of hunting right before the rut.
Before. Yeah.
And the cows, they just kind of stay put, is my understanding. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the goal. And I got a good handful of guys coming out to help me, since I know I can't get a moose out by myself. But
Yeah.
it's going to be a fun trip, man.
That's awesome, dude. So, is that just, you don't have to divulge this information. This can be between us. I was curious about, you drawing this tag. It doesn't sound like it was very difficult for you. Um, was it just kind of
Yeah,
a
no,
one
it
and
wasn't.
done?
We'll talk about that one offline. Sorry, listeners.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah.
let's wrap this thing up, Cole, and then we'll have
Right
a quick
on.
conversation. But guys, make sure you guys check out Cole's podcast, and really do check out his episode of Naked and Afraid, or as Cole puts it, Naked and Afraid. It is really good TV, man. And Cole, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a lot of fun,
Absolutely.
and I have a feeling you've got plenty more stories. So we'll have you back.
Oh,
And
dude, I'm
next time I'm
stacked
down
with
in
them.
Austin. Yeah. Next time I'm down in Austin, I'll take you to dinner. So thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
All right, guys. That's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, I want to thank Cole for coming on the podcast and sharing his experiences from the Colorado mountains to the bush of South Africa. It's some pretty amazing stuff. I'm sure you have plenty more stories, Cole, and we'll get you back on here in the future to tell some of those. I know that I guess our paths may cross in the Colorado mountains this year, as you're hunting elk and I'm hunting moose. I know at least one hunter is going to jump in between us. So thank you again, sir. Appreciate you. To you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Please check the show notes and check out all the stuff that I've linked there. Review us. Check out Cole's podcast. Check out the episodes of Naked and Afraid. But guys, thank you so much. If you have a story, please make sure you hit me up. I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure my listeners would too. But that's it. Thank you so much again. Now get out there and make some stories of your own.